Hey, welcome back, everybody, to our weekly journey we call Living Hope, a show designed to provide hope, inspiration, and education for those living with pancreatic cancer, sharing the real-life stories of those really affected by this deadly disease and how they deal with it on a daily basis. With our host, always brings a ray of sunshine, even though it's kind of cloudy and overcast here in Southern California, Roberta Luna. Welcome.
Thank you, Paul. You're so kind. I know I don't always bring you sunshine, but I appreciate that anyway.
Yeah, you brighten up the day. It's, Southern California, it's gloomy. We're all like dragging our feet. Oh, it's supposed to be sunny every day. That's what we signed up for here.
That's right. That's what we pay the big bucks for, right? Is
That's
the sun. Right. Anyway, today on Living Hope, we welcome Dr. Don Gross, a hospice and palliative care physician who is transforming how we approach life and death through storytelling, curiosity, and compassion. Dr. Gross helps people find connection, love, and meaning in life's most challenging moments. Thank you, Dr. Gross, for being here with us today. We appreciate it. And could you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, sure. Well, thank you for the invitation to be with you. It's a real honor. I think the best way to understand who I am, in addition to the kind introduction, is from my upbringing. And I was raised in a very beautiful, loving family. And was very, very close to my father. And you hear my use of the term past tense, although I still feel profoundly close to him. But he was a hospital administrator and in many ways taught me things that I never wanted to know about healthcare and never actually wanted to be a doctor as a result. And it wasn't until other mentors came into my life, which is a story for another day, that I actually found my way to practicing medicine. And originally I started off specializing in hematology with a particular focus on bone marrow transplant. But it wasn't until my father developed terminal cancer himself that I started to really look at what I was here to do and what were the ways that I could do it. And one of the most profound encounters with him was a night before he was to have a diagnostic biopsy. And he was sitting on his bed. It was quite emotional. And he asked this question somewhat rhetorically, but he asked it of me. And he said, "Why is no one asking me what I want?" And hearing that in the context of myself being a physician, working with people living with life-altering illness, and profound cancers like leukemia, I started to ask myself that question over and over again, in this way as a daughter, as well as in this way as a physician. And it wasn't until he died and he actually requested hospice, which I know is something we'll talk about, that I started to wonder what that specialty is, and eventually found my way to transitioning my form of specialty practice now, where that is what I do. I love what I get to do because, as you said, I find myself in the most intimate and profound moments of people's lives, welcomed in and in a position to mitigate distress, which ultimately is the portal to people experiencing and expressing love. So I think of myself as a fairy godmother, getting to imagine and listen for what matters most to people and making that come true for them.
Well, thank you for that. I'm sorry for the loss of your dad. I know I lost my dad many years ago too, and he's still with me. I think our dads are our first love, really, and so I appreciate your decision to come this way and be the fairy godmother, because I've read a lot about you, and I felt the same way as my dad has asked too, and my mom is, why is nobody asking what I want? And I felt the same way when I got my diagnosis. So I really do appreciate what you are doing, and thank you for that. Maybe, can you let us know and tell us the difference between palliative care and hospice? Because I know people get it confused all the time, and I don't know, why. But if you could just give us, the difference, please.
Absolutely. And there's plenty of reason why. And I think as I will explain it, it will reaffirm why people confuse them. It's confusing. So first and foremost, the terminology of hospice, this is a healthcare benefit. And what that means, it's a form of payment for a particular form of care. And it came into existence in our country actually when the former president, Jimmy Carter, was in office, and he created a demonstration project to look at, is there a way to deliver healthcare at the very end of life that would make a difference for people? And as I think many of your listeners know, he is now 100 years old and he is enjoying the benefit that he helped design, developed, and give breath to. He's been enjoying it for over a year. So fundamentally, hospice is a mechanism to pay for care specifically designed for people who have a prognosis of 6 months or less should the illness run its natural course. And as I just said, former President Jimmy Carter has been receiving the benefit of hospice for well over a year. I can promise you that's not fraudulent care that he is receiving. He is absolutely entitled. And what most people don't understand is that one need not die in 6 months. We have no relationship with the Grim Reaper. We have no crystal ball to tell you when the end of your life is actually approaching. All we can use is our best medical training and skills to make our best guess on what we understand the natural history of a disease to provide. And the key is that natural history of a disease. So when someone chooses to allow a disease to run its natural course, to not try to interrupt what's happening to that disease, rather to want to absolutely interrupt the experience of living with that disease, that is what the hospice benefit was designed for, and that's what the hospice benefit delivers. It's required to have 5 team members minimum in order to be in compliance with Medicare and to be able to be reimbursed by Medicare. Those 5 team members are a physician, a nurse, a social worker, a spiritual care provider, and a volunteer. How one engages with those team members is also quite specified. People must be seen by the nurse case manager a minimum of every 14 days, once every 2 weeks at minimum. I can assure you that most bona fide hospices are seeing their families, the loved ones that they're caring for, well over that. They are seeing them multiple times a week. But sometimes people actually want to travel. Sometimes people want to do other things rather than be at home waiting for care providers to come see them. And so they are allowed to not see their care providers for a maximum of 14 days and not be out of compliance. And so what that tells you is hospice is about having people feel as well as they choose to, as well as they want to, having us focus on what matters most to them, whether that's physical symptoms, psychosocial, emotional symptoms, existential symptoms that arise perhaps throughout our entire life, but certainly when we are experiencing serious life-altering illness and life-limiting illness, particular to hospice. And that's why the team is designed to have multiple disciplines with multiple perspectives surrounding the individual living with this illness, as well as the people in their lives supporting their care, their loved ones, their family, whether by blood or however they define them. This hospice team is required to pay attention to all members within this care setting, because we know living with serious illness affects not just the person living with it, but everyone in their lives. So hospice is required to pay attention to all these people in all these ways. They can have additional team members, like therapy, art therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, you name it, but they are required at minimum to have the 5: physician, nurse, social worker, spiritual care provider, and volunteer. Now that's hospice. And hospice was formally enacted in the 80s after President Carter left office, and it was actually formally created as the Medicare Part A benefit when Ronald Reagan was in office. Since that time, the benefit, for all intents and purposes, has not been updated. There are minor tweaks to the payment model. It's not worth going into here. But by and large, even though how we live and how we die has changed dramatically thanks to medical science, how the hospice benefit is allowed to engage with people has not changed. And I just want to put a plug in there for one of our congresspeople, Blumenauer out of Oregon, who's put a bill forward called the Hospice Care Act to try and finally update the hospice benefit to do what has now been relegated to palliative care. This is my long way of trying to get you to why is there confusion between what is hospice and what is palliative care. The way that I think of it and why you needed to know all that about hospice first is think about a donut. Or if you are a savory type of person, then think about a bagel. Or if you like sweet bagels, then you can think about what I call a bagel nut. So that's when you have a blueberry bagel with strawberry cream cheese. That's not a savory bagel. It's also not quite a donut. Anyways, take your round food item of choice that has a hole in it. That entire round food item, bagel, donut, bagel nut, whatever you want to call it, that whole entity is palliative care. Palliative care in this country was born out of hospice. It does not have a payment model like hospice does. And why that matters is that means palliative care as a specialty is still relegated to the fee-for-service model, like oncology, like cardiology, like neurology, etc. Why that matters, why I'm belaboring this, is how you may or may not find palliative care where you live is because of the finances. The only person who can bill, who can charge insurances to get reimbursed for the work they do is a doctor. What that means is my ability to earn enough billing money to then pay for a social worker or a spiritual care person on my team or a nurse, distinct from a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant who also have the capacity to bill. I have to be able to bill enough to not only be able to pay myself a living wage, but also then pay for all these other team members. And I can tell you, it's very difficult to do. We don't get reimbursed the way that neurosurgeons do. And so by and large, you will not find palliative care looking like the team that a hospice team is required to have because there is no reimbursement mechanism that can actually support that. And so what you'll find out in the world typically is the further you get away from a large academic hospital setting, the smaller and more minimalistic, if you will, a palliative care team you'll find. So the likelihood that you'll find a team that aspires to look like hospice with a physician, a nurse specialist, a social worker, a spiritual care provider, highly unlikely outside of large inpatient hospital settings. What you will often find if you're lucky enough to find palliative care where you live outside of urban settings is maybe a nurse specialist, maybe a social worker, maybe a physician, but often in single or dyads rather than the entire complement of a team. And that's simply economics. And so until our healthcare system changes, that's not likely to change. The benefit of palliative care and why it tries to exist, even in this non-supportive economic structure of our healthcare system, is because it is not beholden to the 6-month or less prognosis that hospice is beholden to. So that means anybody living with any form of serious illness, and we'll come back to what that means, is allowed to get whatever disease-focused, cure-focused, modifying treatment they wish, meaning I want to interrupt the natural history of this disease. I want the disease to go away or slow down. I want to pay attention to that. You can get all that type of treatment you want, plus specialists focused on the experience that you're having while receiving those treatments, while living with this disease. So attentive focus on the physical burden of the disease, as well as the modifying treatments, attentive focus on the psychosocial impacts of living with the disease, what it does to our relationships, to ourselves, our own identity, to our work relationship, etc., as well as the spiritual realm. We are not able to separate our physical bodies from our spiritual bodies. We are integrated spiritual beings. And it's important to try and create a care around you as you are living with this serious illness. So that's the difference between hospice and palliative medicine. Hospice is the donut hole or the bagel hole. That means hospice is in fact palliative care. It is a very specific form of palliative care restricted to people who have a prognosis of 6 months or less should the illness run its natural course and are choosing to allow the disease to run its natural course and want to focus on maximizing the quality of life and the style of life they want. Everything outside that donut hole is also palliative care. It's just not hospice. Hope that makes sense to you.
It doesn't. It's quite an explanation, and I appreciate it because it, like I said, it's always very confusing and you never know which way you're supposed to go. So thank you for diving into that. I do appreciate it. In your, and I will ask you to explain, TED Talk, Ask the Time is Now, you emphasize the importance of curiosity. First, could you please explain what TED Talk is?
Oh, so the TED is a series of convenings with people presenting novel ideas. I'm sure that's not the actual tagline of TED, but it's been going on for many, many years. So there's TED at large, and then there are these local creations, what are called TEDx events. So local regions will create their own TED experience, and they'll create the themes, but it's in keeping with how TED requires that the presentations um, be offered. And so you can go online and search TED, TED, and see millions of talks at this point from
Yeah.
around the globe.
Oh, thank you. I must have been missing something because I saw that and I wasn't really sure what it was. So, and then the curiosity shaped the way you approach communication with patients and their families at the end of life care.
Yes. So, again, thinking back to my own training in hematology, there was a particular moment just before it became clear my father um, was himself living with a terminal illness. I recall this encounter with a person who was coming to see me for a second opinion. They'd already been given a life-limiting diagnosis, and as is often encouraged, and I will emphasize, if you are ever faced with being given a serious diagnosis like pancreatic cancer, please do yourself and your loved ones a favor and get a second opinion from your local academic center, or maybe not local academic center, but do that. You deserve that. Doesn't matter how much you love and trust your doctor, just do that. They may completely corroborate, and they may have a different opinion. And your life and your loved ones' love deserve getting as much insight and thought around your health and well-being as possible. So that being said, this person was coming to the academic center where I was training for a second opinion. And when I first encountered her walking into the exam room, she wouldn't make eye contact with me. When I tried to introduce myself and get to know her, she would answer me with one-word sentences, yes, no, again, with her head looking down. And I was feeling really thwarted. I was not sure how I was going to be able to connect with her, make a difference, understand what I could do for her. And out of that frustration, truly, I was frustrated. Um, I had words escape my mouth before I knew what I was saying. And this is what I share in the TED Talk, which is out of nowhere, really. It was not thought out. I asked her if I had a magic wand, and I'm not saying that I do, but if I did, what would you wish for? And I couldn't believe what I just said, because this person, as I said, already was given a life-limiting diagnosis. And one, as I did in that moment, was thinking, how could you ask such an audacious question to a person? Of course, they're going to say, make my cancer go away, you idiot, and probably walk out the door. But she didn't. And it changed my life, and it changed the way I practice medicine forever. In that very moment of those words escaping my mouth, she looked me straight in the eye, again, the first time that visit, and said without hesitation, make my anxiety go away. I didn't see that coming. And that instantly had me realize I needed to not assume I knew anything about what anyone was going to say. And that the profound opportunity is to be profoundly curious, so that what matters most to someone has an opportunity to be spoken. In our healthcare system, we have a really aggressive habit that I don't think we're even aware of, but it's a term that I'm stealing from the incredible film Shawshank Redemption, which is we institutionalize people. And particularly in the world of hematology and oncology, we institutionalize people. We teach people to think about what matters most to them, rather than being curious and exploring what matters most to them. I promise you, unless you studied medicine, whether it's nursing or medical school, you didn't know what a creatinine was before you ever got admitted to the hospital. You didn't know what a hemoglobin was. Like, these were not part of your lexicon of languages and thoughts and concerns and considerations. You might be going, why am I so tired? Why am I so bloated? right? That's what concerns you. Why don't I feel the way that I know I can feel or want to feel? Those are the concerns. It's not what is my creatinine. But we teach people very quickly to start focusing on our shorthand for what tells us what's going on in a body or what we think is going on. And it disconnects us from these other parts of ourselves, as I said, which are actually not disconnectable, which is our soul, our spirit, what makes us who we are. But medicine has gone astray here, and we forget to keep ourselves integrated, and we forget to remember we're talking to a whole human being, not just someone with a disease, or worse, not just a disease. We forget the person at all. So for me, the practice of curiosity is a way to stay present to the human being and all the human beings that they are connected to, and living beings, as you may be hearing my dog desperately wanting to come be with me right now. All the living beings that are connected to us. We have to pay attention to all that. If we don't, we fail in our roles as being true caring providers of health. We need to care about all of you.
And how do we get our doctors to do that? Because I mean, I'm sad to say it's not common.
It's not common, and there are many reasons for that, and mostly it doesn't stem from the doctor. I want to be really clear about that. By and large, the people that choose to go into the practice of healthcare want to make a difference for you as a human being. We care about you. We are drawn to caring. We also like science. That's true. Most of us have to like science in order to go through this training. But what starts us down that path is because we care and we want to care. And this is one way of expressing our care. And unfortunately, our healthcare system quite literally beats us out of it. We become so refocused. We too, as providers, become institutionalized. We are told what matters. We are told efficiency. Being efficient is what matters. I can promise you, no one went to med school writing an essay about wanting to become an efficient doctor or an efficient nurse. Like, that's not on our to-do list. But we get retrained to think that is a priority for us. And it's really hard to push back against a large system that now has designed itself so that doctors see you every 15 or 20 minutes. No doctor says that is the optimal way to care for people. And I promise you, no patient is like, yes, I only want to see my doctor for 15 minutes. That's exactly how I want to encounter them. So I look at it from a system-wide problem that is going to be really difficult to untangle until it collapses. And I think we're seeing some of the collapse, and COVID showed us some of the collapse. But we haven't yet figured out a new model. And so for me, what I try to do is to allow people to know where advocacy lies. Where are the people who can support you even inside a broken system? So first and foremost, if you're given a serious illness diagnosis, you are entitled to palliative care. Period. You are entitled to palliative care. You want to advocate for it. You want to teach your doctors who don't know what it is because it's such a new specialty. They were never trained and raised with it. The newer doctors are, but people of my generation and older have no idea what it is. So you now have the tools. You can tell them about the donut and the donut hole, or the bagel and the bagel hole. When they tell you, oh, no, you're not dying. I have lots of things for you. I have lots of cancer-directed therapies or heart, disease treatments or whatever it is. And you can say, hey, doc, that's great. I'm thrilled to hear it. And I want this extra layer of support to support me through it so I can manage all the things that are going to be happening and are happening. Because quite frankly, my life has just been turned upside down with this news. I deserve all this support. So you want to advocate for it until doctors start to automatically give it to you. You want to request that.
I agree, but a lot of patients don't know to ask for that. They don't know.
Right.
So how do we get that to them?
That's, you're doing the job. Like, thank you for this radio program. Thank you for this conversation. And I know that there are magazines out there also trying to tell this story. It's how you and I connected. Like, we have to do the education. And as I said, healthcare, medical school, nursing school is slowly starting to catch up. But listen, palliative care is not a required topic of education for medical students. As I tell people, when I go through training and across every medical school, you're required to do certain specialty rotations. So you learn you know, what it is, what kind of doctor you want to be when you grow up, but also understanding how the body works. So I have to do a rotation in medicine, internal medicine. I have to do a rotation in general surgery. Within those, there are subsets where maybe I'll see cardiology, GI, oncology, what have you. I have to do OBGYN. I have to do psychiatry, neurology, pediatrics. And I'm going to circle back to OBGYN, and I feel comfortable saying this as a woman. Listen, 50% of the population will never avail themselves of OBGYN services. It just won't. But I'm still required to spend 6 weeks on that specialty service. And I'm grateful for it. We need to. I'm not saying we shouldn't. But guess what? 100% of us will experience death.
Very true.
We are not required to have a single lecture, a single day, a single week, let alone 6 weeks of rotation with palliative care. It's not on the board exam. We're not required to know this knowledge. That's a problem. So until our healthcare system and our education system catches up, then we need to be self-advocates. We have to spread the word, grassroots. It's how it always goes, right? Until we can change how we prioritize what we learn and the care that we provide.
Yeah, you're dedicated to transforming the end of life care. What changes, and we might have covered some of this, are needed in this field, and how can we get there?
Yeah. So you're hearing it. It's going to come from both ends, right? So from the grassroots, from laypersons, if you will, those listening to this show saying, hey, I didn't know I could have palliative care, or my loved one could, or my friend could. I'm going to tell them. And you want to be prepared for the doctor or the nurse practitioner or the physician assistant to push back and say, no, 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 you're not ready for that. You're not dying. And you need to say, guess what? It's not about me dying. It's about me living. Palliative care is not the same as hospice. Did you know that? Here, let me take you to a website that'll explain it to you. Now, can you make the referral to palliative care while you read about it? Because I know I want that and I'm entitled to it. Right? So that's the grassroots, knowing to ask for it. And then we need to change our healthcare system. We need to make it valuable in the healthcare system. We need to demand it so it's resourced. And we need to have it part of standard education. So it needs to be required learning. You want your doctors, your nurses, your social workers, your spiritual care providers to know about it and to be able to support all of you and your community, your family around you.
Yeah. We didn't get to some of the things I really wanted to talk about, but I do appreciate, because this is really informative, and I think gotten a lot of answers that, we've had questions and not be able to answer. So I do appreciate. What is the best advice in the next few minutes that we have that you could give to a patient and their family just getting this diagnosis?
Yeah, I would say to be curious, right? And to look for the support that's around you, to know what you're entitled to. Do not be afraid to inquire about a second opinion. If your doctor pushes back, they're not your doctor. Any doctor wants you to feel fully informed and will encourage you to seek the support that has you feel confident in the steps you're going to choose, right? So number one, advocate for a doctor that aligns with you, that supports you in seeking a second opinion, that supports you in seeking palliative care support. Be staunch advocate for it. You are entitled to it. And if and when you choose to say, you know what, I don't like how this approach to care is helping me feel, is helping me live my life. I don't like what it feels like to have to go to the infusion center this many times a week or what have you. I'm okay. I've lived the life that I want to live. I want to keep living it on my terms, not on the healthcare system's terms. And when you are curious about hospice and how to experience the last phase of life on your terms, then I invite you to explore that. I invite you to explore what hospice is well before you ever need it, well before your loved one ever needs it. It is not a scary thing to ask the questions, to be curious, and to get the real answers. You can call your friendly neighborhood local hospice agency anytime and say, hey, can I have hospice informational? I'm curious what it is you do. They'll do that for free.
Well, thank you for that. And again, I really do want to have you come back because there's a lot of things I really want to talk to you about, especially your storytelling and your fairy godmother. So let's plan on having you come back. And I do appreciate you being here. So thank you so much.
It's such my pleasure, and I'd be delighted to come back anytime. Thank you
You.
so much for this.
As long as you speak my name, I shall live forever is dedicated to Randy Pausch, the Carnegie Mellon professor who wrote the last lecture. Quoting Randy, never underestimate the importance of having fun. I'm dying and I'm having fun, and I'm going to keep having fun every day because there's no other way to play it.
Well, there you have it. Some words of wisdom to end our show, our weekly journey we call Living Hope, designed to provide inspiration and hope for those living with pancreatic cancer. If you've been listening to the show and you'd like to share a story, by all means, contact us. We're always looking for other tales to tell. And if you or anyone you know needs help along this journey, lots of places we can give you. Let's give you one today, letswinpc.org. Let's Win PC for pancreatic cancer.org. And for all of us here at the OC Talk Radio Network, thank you for listening. Hope you'll share this information with others and come back and join us each and every week.